production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, retail beef prices hit another record in December and appears there's no relief in sight.
In Southern gardening, let Microgreens cure you of cabin fever.
In the food factor, keep up your running momentum by timing your snacks.
In the markets, total U.S. catfish processing last year dipped 10% from 2013. As the cotton trade is hit with lower prices before the first month of the new year is over.
In the feature segment, the Great Mississippi Tea Company. This Brookhaven area operation is seeking to do what many haven't, raise and process high-quality tea in the United States.
All tea comes from the same plant. So if you have black tea, green tea, oolong, yellow, white teas, they're all the same plant. It's just how you process it. But what we're aiming for is really some high-grade specialty tea.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week. Retail beef prices set a new record in December.
Artis, it would seem that prices are still on an upward climb here in the United States, according to the latest U.S. Department of Agriculture reports. They're almost $1 higher than 1 year ago. Retail fresh beef prices averaged a record $6 per pound in December. That's 6.5 cents higher than the record set in October. Choice beef averaged $6.31 per pound in the stores, the 10th record month in 2014. American consumers are still buying beef. Demand rose for the 10th month in a row. In November, demand was more than 7% higher than the previous November. In the wholesale market, slaughter steer prices in December were down almost 8 cents per pound to $1.63. That's still almost 31 cents higher than a year earlier. The USDA is predicting slaughter steer prices will average in the $1.60s, up from $1.54 in 2014. It looks for overall beef production to drop almost 2% this year. That would seem to predict higher consumer prices.
Well, the news about the pipeline oil spill on the Yellowstone River won't help, but it probably won't stop supporters of the Keystone XL pipeline. TransCanada is filing eminent domain against some landowners. The U.S. Senate is debating the pipeline's fate in the Congress.
This pipeline could already be a zombie pipeline, dead man walking.
From the opening salvo, partisan bickering over TransCanada's proposed conduit to deliver Canadian oil sands crude to refineries in the Gulf of Mexico reverberated through the Senate.
But first, what you have to understand what's going on here is that the Republican Party has become the political wing of the fossil fuel industry.
Opponents cite issues ranging from environmental concerns to a lack of permanent jobs, to the current worldwide glut of oil as reasons to reject Keystone XL. But those in favor of the project point to the prospect of North American energy independence in an era when traditional oil-producing nations increasingly teeter on the brink of instability.
We know the independence that comes when you are not reliant on others, particularly others who wish you ill, for a resource that powers your country, that allows you to be great.
The most strident resistance to the pipeline has boiled to the surface in the Cornhusker State.
At 830,000 barrels per day at 2% is 16,600 barrels per day leaking undetected in my water, on my property.
For the first time since TransCanada sought U.S. approval to begin construction, the Senate is in Republican hands. And now the proposal appears to command ample bipartisan support to assure its approval, if not enough to override a veto from the White House.
It's not just carrying Canadian crude. It carries crude from my state of North Dakota and the state of Montana. Light sweet Bakken crude goes into this pipeline as well. Everybody talks about the Canadian crude, but they forget that this moves domestic crude as well. My state alone produces 1.2 million barrels of oil a day, and we're moving 700,000 barrels a day on trains because we can't get enough pipelines. So here we want to put 100,000 barrels a day into this pipeline, and we've been waiting for 6 years.
Running is a great way to stay in shape and burn off those extra holiday calories. But did you know not eating right can stop you in your tracks? In this week's episode of The Food Factor, Natasha Haynes of the Mississippi State Extension Service tells us how to eat so we run that extra mile.
Runners are serious about running, but they also need to be serious about timing their meals and snacks. Pre-run snacks offer performance advantages, raising blood glucose levels and carbohydrates. These are an essential fuel boost for longer, harder runs. 2 hours before a run, try a light snack. If you only have an hour before a run, try a sports drink or maybe just a handful of dry cereal. After exercising, runners need to replenish their bodies with necessary fluids and electrolytes. So try an energy bar with a mix of carbs and protein and a bottle of water. Snacks are perfect for runners because they provide the body with fuel and leave the competition who didn't eat right in the dust. It's time to make healthy food a factor in your life.
For a list of snacks for before and after runs, visit the Food Factor Facebook page.
Well, some vegetable gardeners get bored and restless during the winter months. In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman shows us how growing microgreens can relieve the symptoms of cabin fever.
Have you been bored, restless, or even irritable because you can't get into your garden this winter? Well, my friend, you have cabin fever. Cabin fever is also called seasonal affective disorder because of the short and cloudy days of winter and can impact many gardeners during the winter months. And for the active gardener, it only gets worse when all those catalogs start arriving. But there is a simple cure until spring arrives. You need to grow an indoor microgreens salad garden. Microgreens are colorful, nutritious, and a delicious way to brighten any winter mood. Arugula, Asian greens bok choy or kinko, or spicy mesclun mix are good, easy-to-grow choices. And look how beautiful these red beets are. Growing microgreens is easy and only requires a small space on a windowsill or under a light. Any size container will do. Bedding plant trays or repurposed plastic clamshells are good growing containers. Sprinkle seeds of your favorite greens on the surface of moistened growing mix. Gently tamp and cover. After a few days, the seeds will be germinating. After 7 days, the greens will be ready to start harvesting. Sowing seeds weekly can ensure a steady supply of microgreens, keeping you cabin fever free. Microgreens are sometimes called vegetable confetti and can be used as a decorative addition to dinner, or when blended together, they can be a colorful salad. So if you're exhibiting any of the symptoms of cabin fever, try growing some of these fresh microgreens indoors. You'll scratch that gardening itch, as well as having some tasty salads. I'm Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Now, Layton researchers at the U.S. Department of Agriculture found that leaves from almost all of the microgreens have 4 to 6 times more nutrients than mature leaves of the same plant. Now, red cabbage microgreens were the highest in vitamin C, while the green daikon radish had the most vitamin E. Well, in our feature segment today, see why Brookhaven, Mississippi is attracting notice in the U.S. tea industry. Time now for the markets with Layton. And Layton, you say catfish prices slipped almost a penny from the previous month?
That's right, Artis, but the pond bank price is still above year-ago levels. We'll have that story coming up momentarily. Also ahead here in the market, speculators may have pushed feeder cattle prices further than they needed to go. Cotton's price slump goes lower as U.S. wheat struggles to be competitive on the world market. Sales of processed catfish are up according to the monthly snapshot of the aquaculture industry. In December 2014, producers in the U.S. received a pond bank price of $1.15 per pound on average. Now that's for premium size live fish. That is 5 cents above the December 13 price. Farm sales total just a touch over 25 million pounds round weight, a drop of 6% from a year ago. Meanwhile, processor sales were up from December 2013, running about 3% above the year-ago figure. A lot of technical selling has left the cattle sector with mixed prices as we record this edition of Farm Week. In feeder cattle, the question of whether the future is down or up is a valid one. Analyst Ted Seifert says having too many speculators in this market may have pushed things too far.
With the big run-up that we had in feeder cattle, that drew the attention of a lot of speculators. And when you get these speculators running into the market, a lot of times that will create a bubble, so to speak, and push the market maybe further than it needs to go. The other problem with that, though, is when all these speculators have their positions and they're all really long in the market, if you give them a reason to get out and they all go running for the doors, we can really drop a lot further and faster than what we may have needed to. And I think that is really the case in the feeder cattle market. Really, until we get back to a normal mix of hedgers, commercials, and speculators, you could continue to see this sort of disjuncture for the time being. And the technicals in the feeder cattle market, when we gapped lower 3 or 4 days in a row until we expanded the limits, we left these big holes in the chart. We went up and filled all those gaps, except for the top gap, we missed by 4 ticks. That's a really negative technical signal, and we've been coming back down since then. So that negative technical outlook is getting your speculators to sell. But once we flush that out and once we get back to a normal mix, I think you can find some more strength.
Well, it was triple-digit losses for hog futures by the market close on Tuesday of this week. Falling hard is how analyst Elaine Cubb describes it. She says there's reason to be bearish on the pork sector these days.
We have seen hog exports been falling since spring, so there are bearish headwinds for the hog market. There's been a lot of speculative short selling coming on in recent weeks. So yeah, there's been nothing yet that's really, even this idea of a third strain of PED virus, not even that created a bullish spark for hogs. So they're just sort of trading down here at these levels.
The trivia quiz is about catfish this week. Here's the question for you. Which type of catfish product generates the most sales for the aquaculture industry? Is the answer A, frozen fish, or B, fresh fish? I'll have the answer at the end of the markets.
We're going to pause for a short break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll look at the calendar and the rest of the markets. Leighton Spann reports cotton prices are not looking good while wheat stocks are growing. In the feature segment today, the Great Mississippi Tea Company. It plans to be one of the few operations actually growing tea in the United States.
At Mississippi State University, Extension is reaching beyond the college campus and impacting adult education. We're instructing agricultural professionals on the latest trends in research and technology, inspiring communities, empowering small businesses, and promoting the growth of healthy families where youth and adults can reach their fullest potential.
The MSU Extension Service, sharing our vision for the future.
Before we get back to the markets, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. A one-day workshop on wild hog damage management takes place Monday, February 9th. The location is the Grenada County Extension Service office on Fairground Road in Grenada. The hours are 8:45 a.m. to 2 p.m. Registration is $20 and that includes lunch. You'll learn about wild hog biology, behavior patterns, and how to trap them. You'll also hear about wild hog diseases and the implications for humans and domestic livestock. Continuing ed credit is available for foresters and logging professionals. The annual meeting of the Northeast Mississippi Fruit and Vegetable Producers Association takes place Thursday and Friday, February 12th and 13th. The location is the Lee County Agri Center on Highway 145 at Verona. The educational conference will feature Producers speaking about their experiences, commercial exhibitors will be on hand as well. Go to our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
The cotton market was grinding to new lows this week as we produce this segment. The big and increasing supply of fiber is troubling traders. There's also concern about the global economic outlook, especially for China. Analyst Lewis Rose says this week will likely feature strong export sales. He encourages producers to be ready to either sell rallies or hedge some cotton using well-placed puts. Meanwhile, extension economist O.A. Cleveland of Mississippi State says of the cotton market, quote, "The bear continues to slash out with his razor-sharp claws." In the wheat pit now, March Chicago was 5 cents higher late Wednesday morning, propped up in part by corn prices, according to traders. Wheat remains under pressure as exports continue to fall short. Extension economist Brian Williams talked to me about the recent USDA report on this grain, as well as other factors at play. Brian, what's the bottom line as far as wheat from the most recent supply-demand report?
We had higher ending stocks on both the global and the U.S. levels. U.S. ending stocks were revised up about 33 million bushels, with a lot of that coming from lower feed use. And then global ending stocks were revised up by 1.1 million metric tons, and most of that's because of an increase in production numbers. Really no surprise in those figures? No big surprises. Now, I understand that as far as exports out of Russia, they were lowered, but increased exports coming out of Ukraine. Is this whole Black Sea region, is the wheat market still focusing on that, or is that kind of backed off in importance? Right, yeah, they did change those numbers around a little bit, but the tensions in the region seem to have kind of cooled off a little bit, and so rather than looking at the political pressures from the area, now the markets have kind of shifted towards the weather in the area. Mm-hmm. All right, winter wheat projections in the U.S., what's the latest on that? Well, there are some big surprises there. Looking at the U.S. numbers, we've got 5% fewer acres than we had a year ago, with U.S. acres about 40.45 million acres planted this last fall. That's about 500,000 acres lower than even the lowest pre-report expectation. And then Mississippi's got quite a few fewer acres as well, with 150,000 acres planted. Now, of course, the stronger dollar seems to have been play in not only wheat, but a lot of markets, but it seems like wheat takes it more on the chin when the dollar is strong than maybe corn or soybeans. It has, and that's hurt our exports. Exports stayed the same in the last USDA World Ag Supply and Demand estimate, but the number was already fairly low. And so with the strong dollar and then the economy struggling in Europe, that's really kind of hurting the wheat markets. And I know as far as Chicago futures, they seem to struggle more than Minneapolis and Kansas City. Why that difference? Well, the big difference is that there's different types of wheat traded in each market. Chicago is the one Mississippi's interested in with soft red, but Kansas City deals with hard red winter wheat, and Minneapolis deals with spring wheat. Before our feature story, let's check the trivia answer for this week. And the correct choice is A. Frozen fish is the top seller. It in fact accounted for 61% of catfish sales in December.
Our feature story today takes us to Brookhaven, Mississippi. Two ambitious entrepreneurs are trying innovative techniques when it comes to commercial tea production. Jason McDonald and Timothy Gibson started the Great Mississippi Tea Company in 2012. The two have consulted the Mississippi State University Extension Service and other experts in their venture. Farmweek's Amy Taylor reports they're looking forward to offering locally produced, fresh, organic tea products. This story first aired on Farm Week last September.
Freshly brewed tea has been a beverage of choice in many cultures for thousands of years. It can be served hot or cold and comes in pretty much any flavor to suit your fancy. Tea has been used as a sleep aid, stress relief, and even for doctoring sunburn. It's a staple item at social gatherings, particularly in the South. And after a hard day's work in the hot sun, a nice glass of iced tea is hard to beat. In Brookhaven, Mississippi, Jason McDonald and Timothy Gibson decided to launch the Great Mississippi Tea Company, where they grow camellia plants for making tea. Jason McDonald tells the story behind this crazy idea.
Well, after Hurricane Katrina, we lost a lot of our timber in Walthall County, and so we'd been looking for a crop that would withstand a hurricane. And we were on vacation in Charleston in 2002, and we saw the Charleston tea plantation. So we decided to take a visit. So we went out there, and they said that it was a camellia, needed high heat, humidity, and acidic soil, and ample rainfall. And I said, well, sounds like we found a crop. So we called up Rebecca Bates, our extension agent, and said, we've got this crazy idea, will it work? And she said, well, we'll try.
I was thrilled. My background is horticulture, so I knew that tea came from a camellia plant. I knew that we grew camellias very well in Mississippi and in Lincoln County, but I really didn't know about the process of growing tea, the culture of tea. I didn't quite understand how it was harvested. The soil type it needs is a good sandy loam. It needs an acid soil, and we certainly have plenty of that here in Lincoln County.
Bates says the soil was sent to the soil testing lab at Mississippi State University Extension Service to be analyzed for nutrient levels and determine if anything needed to be added, such as lime or fertilizer. This service is available to all Mississippi landowners who can send dirt samples to the lab for analysis and recommendations. Co-founder Timothy Gibson explains more about getting started.
We had to build planters because of drainage issues. We've had to cut in different drains to get the water away, have everything potted over from little pots to big pots, planting bigger plants in the ground so that we can take cuttings from them later.
For irrigation, a low voltage system is used which comes on automatically each day and has a built-in fertilization system. Additionally, Jason McDonald explains the need for the shade cloth.
When the plants are as small as they are, if they go in full sun, it can burn them back and kill the plants. It's also important because when it gets 108 degrees with heat index, it offers a little bit of shade for the cooler weather. It's also the irrigation comes on at the hottest part of the day, so the mist and the shade together, it actually will cool off the area about 20 degrees.
The tea company has a total of 30,000 plants. And at 2 years of age, the oldest portion of the crop is still a year away from harvest. Timothy Gibson explains the harvesting process.
You have hand processing and mechanical processing. Hand processing is exactly what it sounds like. You have people that get out there and they pluck the first 2 little leaves and the 1 little bud that's coming up. They pluck it off, throw it in a basket, then it gets laid out so that it can lose a lot of moisture. And then it gets broken up and let oxidize, and that's where it turns brown. Mechanizing does the same thing.
Additionally, Jason McDonald describes the company's goals after harvesting the plants.
All tea comes from the same plant, so if you have black tea, green tea, oolong, yellow, white teas, they're all the same plant. It's just how you process it. Then you can add flavorings on top. It's wildly popular in the United States with the flavorings, primarily because there's a lot of chlorine chemicals in our water, so it's kind of masking those bad tastes. But what we're aiming for is really some high-grade specialty tea that some things would be cold brewed, so you still get the flavors. Flavorings around the world are not really sought after, but we will have a line of tea bags and things for American use that would be flavored, and we'll also have orthodox and bulk tea.
McDonald hopes to harvest an experimental tea crop by 2015, then offer small batches to limited customers in 2018 and ramp up to full production by 2020. He says they want to use a mechanizing process for harvesting that doesn't sacrifice the quality that hand processing would produce. Another goal is to reach out to the community.
We think we've got something that's pretty unique and people want to come out. We've got some plans to talk with retired teachers and getting some lesson plans drawn up for school groups. We'll also offer wedding space, meeting spaces. We'll do tea processing workshops where people can come out and pick the tea by hand and make the tea, so it's something special they can take home. We'll have farm tours, hopefully.
I'm all about farmers markets, so I would love to see it become a farmers market product. these type products could be sold at the market by the pound or just in small quantities. I would hope to see eventually that he could actually bottle some teas, some chai teas.
Finally, Jason McDonald says in addition to guidance from MSU Extension Service, they were blessed to receive advice from tea consultant Nigel Milliken of the United Kingdom, as well as a grant from the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce. Until 2020 rolls around, we'll have to wait patiently before we see how the tea turns out. From Brookhaven, Mississippi, I'm Amy Taylor reporting.
And you can watch this story again on the Great Mississippi Tea Company on our Farm Week website, Facebook page, or YouTube. So all you got to do is type in Great Mississippi Tea Company on Google or Facebook, and you can find them. You can adopt a tea plant if you want to. They look like they're headed. I mean, you know, the basic thing now is, you know, it's a long lead time, so hopefully they'll be able to survive that. Well, we are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, something that most people have never seen.
We will be going to the National Championship for corn harvesting by hand. It's a lost skill, and it is a reminder of how labor-intensive food production used to be.
In the food factor, the Super Bowl is coming up. Don't let food poisoning spoil your party.
In Southern gardening, pruning. It's not magic, regardless of what Gary says.
For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artis Ford.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.